They booked the ballroom without telling me. Investors, cameras, new banners with a tagline I had never approved. My son, Adrian, took the stage like he had been born on it. "Today," he said, "we begin a planned transition at Hale Dynamics. My father will step back into a visionary role. I'll assume day-to-day as CEO. Applause, a few gasps, and one long silence, mine. I didn't correct him. I didn't clap. I watched. He thanked the board, thanked the banks, thanked our legal team for smoothing the path. Smooth. That was a word he loved. Sand feels smooth right before it jams an engine. When it ended, people swarmed him. I slipped out a side door and walked the service corridor where the paint still smells like primer. My company never lived on a stage. It lived in loading bays and design labs and in the hands of people who know the weight of steel. In my office, I opened the bylaws. Section 3.2. No change in chief executive without a board vote recorded in minutes. Section 5.1. No press statement implying leadership change prior to vote. I wrote those lines after a partner tried to outflank me in 2004. Adrian knew them. He also knew I never fight shadows. I wait until the light is hard enough to throw proof. "Dad?" He filled the doorway, tie sharp, smile sharper. "It went well," he said. "Optics are everything." "Votes are everything," I said. "And signatures." He chuckled, a little too loud. "You've earned your rest. I'll keep things running." He left before I could answer. That told me more than anything he had said. I called Maeve Chen, outside counsel. "Check the state filings," I said. "Anything, officers, Secretary of State, 8K rumors, and pull our loan covenants. I want every change of control trigger highlighted." "On it," she said. Then I called Noah Briggs, our CFO since the recession that nearly crushed us. "Noah," I said, "how much runway do we have if someone spooks the lenders?" "Enough," he said, "if that someone is you. Not enough if it's anyone else." Good. The numbers still respected me. By midnight, Maeve sent a summary. No board vote, no filings, just a press release that never touched our legal queue. It had Adrian's signature on company letterhead. Transition, continuity, and my favorite, effective immediately. I poured coffee and opened a folder I keep for days like this. Hale Family Holdings, LLC, quietly formed last year. Assignments ready for patents, trademarks, and the source code escrow that actually runs our diagnostics line. All legal, all dormant, all waiting. At 2:07 a.m., I executed the assignments, recorded timestamps, and routed confirmations to Maeve. The assets stayed where they had always belonged, under the roof of the person who built them, only now with a different address on paper that Adrian didn't know existed. At 6:43, Noah texted, "Adrian requested signature authority on operating accounts. Bank wants your countersign." I replied, "Hold. Require dual authorization until board minutes exist." Noah sent a thumbs up and a 3-word prayer. Kill the optics. By 9, compliance pinged me with something worse than optics. A draft consent titled Unanimous Written Consent of the Board. It named Adrian CEO and reclassified me as Chair Emeritus. The attached list included directors' names and my name. "Who circulated this?" I asked. "Adrian's assistant," compliance said. "Wants DocuSign by noon." "Decline," I said, "and print me a copy." I held the pages like a mechanic holds a bent bolt. Proof something upstream is cracked. The signature block showed a digital stamp of my initials, already placed, waiting for me to click to adopt. So clean, so simple, so wrong. I walked to the window that overlooks the loading yard. Forklifts moved in tidy patterns. Work that matters never looks dramatic. It looks repeatable. I called Delgado, our senior independent director. If you get a consent, I said, do not sign. There is no agenda, no notice, no call. We hold a meeting the old way, in the room. Agreed, he said. What's Adrian doing? Acting like votes are decorations. Delgado exhaled. Send me whatever you have. We'll schedule a special meeting. I sent the press release, the consent, and Maeve's memo. Then I opened the server log. Someone had requested admin access to our IP repository at 7:12 a.m. The request came from Adrian's floor. He didn't just want the chair, he wanted the crown jewels that make the chair worth anything. I revoked the pending access and flipped a switch we had installed after a scare 10 years ago, read-only mode for all production repositories until a unique token, known to 3 people, releases them. 2 of those people still worked here. The 3rd one died with Ellen. I keep the token in a place Adrian never visits, the prototype lab beneath the false bottom of a drawer that looks empty. At 11:03, my assistant popped in. He's calling a press Q&A at noon, she said. Wants you beside him. Good, I said. Book the boardroom at 12:30. Full board. Mandatory. She blinked. Without notice? With notice, I said, and handed her envelopes. These were stamped at 10:59, hand deliver to each director. She smiled. She's been with me long enough to see a storm from the first cold wind. At 11:58, on the way to his Q&A, I dialed First Capital, our lead lender. Pull our covenants, I said. If anyone implies a change of control, I want you to remind them that the founder remains in operational command and that any unauthorized statement is a breach by them, not by us. Understood, the banker said, voice suddenly very careful. Noon. Cameras again. Adrian glowed. We're thrilled to formalize the transition. Markets love clarity. Markets love numbers, lawyers love minutes, banks love names they can sue. I stood beside him and smiled for exactly 3 seconds at a time. That is the safe number. A reporter asked, Has the board voted? Adrian said, The board is aligned. Aligned is not the same as voted. Words are tools. Some people use them like flashlights, some like crowbars. I prefer a torque wrench, precise, quiet, and final. When it ended, I went straight to the boardroom. Directors filed in, reading the stamped envelopes I had sent. Delgado took the head of the table. I took the seat I always take, 3 from the end. People misunderstand power. The end seat looks strong. The strong seat is the one with sightlines. The door opened. Adrian walked in, surprised to see everyone. Then he saw the agenda on the screen. Special meeting, clarification of authority and asset control. He stopped. Who called this? He asked. Delgado answered, calm. I did. Under Bylaw 2.7, any 2 directors may call a special meeting. Adrian's eyes found me. Dad, what are you doing? I folded my hands. Letting the light in. He laughed, but his shoulders tightened. We don't need this. The market already. Heard a press release, Delgado said. They haven't heard a vote. Adrian reached into his folder. Then let's vote. He pulled out a sheet of paper. Not a consent, not minutes. A signed contract, terms circled, collateral highlighted, pledging our core patents for a bridge loan he had negotiated to accelerate the transition. Funding tomorrow, 9 a.m. The room went still. The room froze. On the table lay the document Adrian had pulled, a bridge loan agreement already signed on his side. Collateral, our patents. Funding tomorrow, 9 a.m. Delgado read in silence, jaw tight. This was negotiated without board approval? Adrian straightened. I'm CEO. It was urgent. Expansion waits for no one. You're not CEO, Delgado said. "Not until we vote." The silence thickened. Investors don't care about family titles. They care about contracts, collateral, and cash. I let him speak. I let him explain his vision, his bold step. Each word he used was another nail in his own coffin. Then I slid a folder onto the table. "Before anyone votes, review this," I said. Inside, the assignments I had executed at 2:07 a.m. the night before. Every core patent, every escrowed code file, every trademark, legally transferred into Hale Family Holdings, LLC. Adrian had pledged collateral that no longer belonged to Hale Dynamics Incorporated. Gasps around the table. Delgado whispered, "He pledged air." Adrian's face drained, then flushed. "You can't do this," he said. "It's sabotage." "No," I said quietly. "It's stewardship." At that moment the door opened. My assistant leaned in, holding her phone. "Sir, the bank is on line 1. They've received the press release and want confirmation of the new CEO." Delgado looked at me. I nodded. "Tell them, founder remains in command. No change has been voted. Any implied change is a breach by others, not by us." She left. The board sat in a silence, broken only by Adrian's shallow breath. Delgado finally spoke. "We need to vote, not on transition, but on reaffirmation. Who is CEO of Hale Dynamics today?" Hands rose, one by one. All but Adrian's. Unanimous. I didn't smile. I don't smile at funerals. Adrian pushed back from the table. "This isn't over." I looked at him the way you look at a storm cloud rolling in. "No," I said, "it isn't. If you're still with me, make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss the rest of this story. Each chapter reveals how trust, betrayal, and power collide, and how revenge is earned, not given." The door closed hard behind him. Storms don't end with thunder. They end with the flood that follows. And the flood was coming. Adrian didn't show up the next morning. He sent his lawyer instead, a young man in a sharp suit with a voice like polished glass. "Mr. Hale is traveling," he said, sliding papers across the table. "He requests signatures to confirm his authority for interim measures. Nothing controversial." I didn't touch the papers. The board didn't either. Delgado cleared his throat. "Authority follows votes, not requests." The lawyer's smile held. "Markets prefer decisiveness." "Markets prefer solvency," I said. "Tell Adrian the patents he pledged are not company property. They are secured elsewhere." That was the first time I saw the lawyer's face crack. He gathered his papers and left without closing the door. Silence again. No one in that room wanted to admit the truth out loud. Our company had survived global recessions, lawsuits, and foreign competitors, but now it was bleeding from the inside because of blood. At noon, Noah slid into my office. He looked tired, gray around the eyes. "He's calling the banks directly, wants them to freeze operating lines until you transition." I nodded. "And did they?" "Number. But they're nervous. One wrong filing, one rumor, and they'll pull." I stood by the window. Forklifts moved crates across the yard, steady, predictable. Banks don't like storms. They like forecasts. "Send them this," I said, handing Noah a copy of the trust documents. "Real collateral, real signatures, real stability." He hesitated. "And Adrian?" "Adrian is noise. We manage signal." That night, I drove past the old warehouse where this company began, 2 rented bays, 1 forklift, and a borrowed welder. Ellen painted the sign herself, crooked letters that made customers smile. We didn't build this with shortcuts. We built it with repetition, with care, with nights too long and mornings too early. Adrian never liked that part. The next morning my phone buzzed before sunrise. Maeve's voice was sharp. "He filed an injunction, claims you diverted assets fraudulently into a shell, LLC. Good," I said. "Good? Yes, fraud requires proof of misrepresentation. We have none. We have filings, stamps, and notarized signatures, all clean. Courts like clean." She paused. "You want to fight this?" "I want him to think he can win. That's different." The injunction hit the docket at 7:12 a.m. By 9 a.m., my attorney Maeve had the stamped copy in her hand. "Adrian claims fraudulent transfer," she said. "He's asking the court to freeze Hale family holdings and all related accounts until review." I took the paper. The ink was still fresh, the kind that smears if you press too hard. Fraud. It was a bold word, but bold words collapse under clean evidence. "File our response today," I said. "Attach every notarized document. Include the timestamp logs and the witness affidavits." Maeve nodded. "The judge will see through it. But Adrian isn't aiming for the judge. He's aiming for headlines." She was right. Within an hour, business news wires carried the story. "Family rift at Hale Dynamics. Founder and son battle for control." I didn't flinch. I wanted noise. Noise gives cover for precision work. At 10:45, Noah burst in. "The lenders want reassurance. They've seen the headline." "Show them the filings," I said. "And this." I handed him a new memorandum. "No encumbrance, no debt, no pending liens. Assets secured, operations stable." He ran out like a man carrying a torch through dark woods. By noon, the markets twitched. Stock dipped 3%. Not fatal. Not yet. Adrian appeared at the boardroom doors with cameras behind him. He wanted theater. I gave him an empty stage. "Father," he said loudly, "you've undermined shareholder value. You've hidden assets in secret shells." The board turned, some uncomfortable, some curious. I kept my voice even. "Every transfer was disclosed, every seal notarized. Fraud requires deception. There is none here." I slid a binder across the table. Inside, certifications, bank letters, escrow receipts. Proof that Adrian's collateral was a shadow. He didn't even open it. He waved at the cameras. "This is obstruction. This is fear." Delgado raised a hand. "Enough. The board will recess. Cameras out." Reporters shouted questions as they were escorted away. The door closed. Silence. Adrian leaned across the table. "You think paperwork will save you?" "I have momentum, optics. The market believes me." I leaned back, steady. "Markets don't vote. Boards do. Judges do." Paper does. His jaw clenched. He shoved his chair back and stormed out. The sound echoed in the empty room. I sat alone for a moment, breathing slowly. Revenge doesn't need rage. It needs patience, signatures, and timing. And timing was about to turn. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and recycled air. Reporters crowded the steps, their microphones sharp as bayonets. Adrian walked ahead with his lawyer, shoulders back, chin high. He wanted the flashbulbs. I wanted the record. Inside, the clerk called the case. Hale Dynamics versus Hale Family Holdings. Adrian's attorney spoke first, his words rehearsed and slick. "Your Honor, my client asserts that the defendant improperly diverted intellectual property into a shell entity, undermining corporate governance and shareholder value." The judge, a thin man with half-moon glasses, looked bored. "Evidence?" The lawyer presented the injunction filing, the press release, and the so-called transition plan. His voice carried conviction, but conviction without substance is theater. When it was our turn, Maeve rose slowly. "Your Honor, attached in our response are 22 exhibits. Each notarized, each time stamped, all transfers lawful, all compliant with corporate bylaws. My client remains the founder and controlling trustee. Nothing is concealed, nothing is misrepresented. She placed the binder on the bench. The judge skimmed. His eyes narrowed, then softened. "Notarized," he said. "Stamped. Witness affidavits. Mr. Hale, this looks clean." Adrian shifted in his seat. His jaw worked like he was chewing iron. Maeve continued, "The only deception before this court is the press release my client never approved. Markets may run on perception, but courts run on records." For the first time that morning, the room tilted. Not in my favor, not in his, but toward the weight of proof. The judge tapped the bench. "Injunction denied. Assets remain as filed. Case adjourned." A gavel struck. Just like that, the noise ended. Reporters surged again as we left. "Mr. Hale, how do you respond to your son's allegations?" I paused on the courthouse steps. "I built this company with work and law, not shortcuts. Both still stand." Flashbulbs exploded. Adrian stormed past, refusing questions. The cameras caught everything. That night, in the quiet of my office, Delgado called. "He's cornered, but men like him don't stop. They escalate." "I know," I said. "Storms don't end with thunder." Noah came in an hour later, pale. "Sir, he's pulling employees, promising promotions if they side with him. He's trying to split the company from the inside." I nodded. "That's the last card desperate men play. Divide and distract." We drafted a memo. Loyalty bonuses, retention agreements, equity options for anyone who stayed through the turbulence. Paper doesn't just defend, it motivates. By morning, half the staff had signed. The other half waited, watching. And Adrian? He called an emergency meeting with the board. No agenda, just rage. "If your own son dragged you into court over your life's work, would you keep fighting or walk away? Tell me in the comments. I want to know what you would have done." Adrian entered the boardroom with fire in his eyes. "This is war," he said. "No," I whispered, just loud enough for Delgado to hear. "This is still business." And business had rules he hadn't learned. Adrian did not sleep. I could tell from the way his eyes twitched when he entered the boardroom. A man rested in his own skin. A boy wore it like armor. He threw papers across the table. "Retention agreements, loyalty bonuses, equity promises. You're bribing them." "No," I said quietly. "I'm paying them for what they've already built. You offered promotions for betrayal. I offered stability for loyalty. We'll see who chooses what." Delgado watched from the head of the table. His eyes weighed every word like currency. Adrian slammed his fist. "You think signatures and binders will hold me back? This company is moving forward, with or without you." I let him shout. I let the echo settle. Then I slid a single envelope toward him. Inside, the notice of a special audit. Independent, external, already retained. "Every transaction, every call, every loan, every offer," I said. "The auditors will review all of it. Transparency is not optional." His face tightened. "You set them up against me." "I didn't set them up," I said. "You invited them by the way you acted." For a moment, silence. Then he laughed bitterly. "You built an empire and forgot your own blood." "No," I said. "I remembered my blood. That's why I protected it. From you." The audit spread like fire. Emails pulled, phone logs examined, loan documents dissected, Adrian's calls with lenders, his promises to employees, his late-night meetings with competitors. Piece by piece, the story came alive. Not a visionary, but a reckless gambler. When the auditors asked for cooperation, he stalled. When they asked for explanations, he improvised. Every stall, every excuse went into the record. A week later, I stood in the factory again. Machines thundered, sparks flew, men and women in steel-toed boots kept rhythm with drills and conveyors. This was where the company lived, not in press releases, not in staged photographs. A welder lifted his mask, sweat shining. "Mr. Hale," he said, "we're with you. Just tell us what's next." I looked at the floor, scarred from decades of weight. "You keep building, I'll keep guarding." And they nodded, like soldiers who already knew their general had no choice but to fight. The next board meeting was heavier. Adrian arrived with his lawyer again. The lawyer's voice was polished glass, but his eyes were tired. "We request immediate reconsideration of leadership. The market is unsettled. Our client should assume control before confidence collapses." Delgado leaned back. "Confidence collapses when control is stolen, not when it is defended. The audit is still ongoing. Until then, no reconsideration." Adrian sneered. "This board is stacked. They'll never cross him, but the shareholders—" I cut him off. "Bring the shareholders. Let them hear the audit findings. Let them hear the contracts you signed without authority." The lawyer swallowed hard. Adrian's bravado faltered. That night at home I stared at Ellen's photo. Her eyes had never flinched, not even when the First Bank laughed at our loan request 30 years ago. I poured a glass of water, set it on the table beside me, and whispered, "They're trying to turn your company into a circus, but the walls still stand." My phone buzzed. A message from Noah. He's calling an emergency shareholders meeting. Tomorrow. Good. Let him. The next morning, the auditorium filled. Investors, employees, reporters, everyone wanted a seat. Adrian walked on stage, fire in his voice. "My father clings to the past. He hides assets. He resists progress. This company needs energy, youth, vision. I will deliver it." Applause scattered, half-hearted, but loud enough for cameras. I waited until he finished, then walked slowly onto the stage, not rushing, not demanding, simply arriving, as if time itself had been waiting for me. I held up a binder, the audit's preliminary findings. "Every promise he made," I said, "every loan he negotiated, every signature he tried to forge, recorded here. Recklessness does not equal vision, and betrayal does not equal leadership." The room shifted. Eyes moved from him to me, and for the first time his voice trembled. "They're lies." "No," I said, "they're receipts." What would you have done if your own son stood on a stage and declared himself CEO while the ink on your bylaws was still wet? Would you have stayed silent, or would you have spoken then, in front of everyone? The shareholders raised their hands one by one. Confidence vote. Majority sided with me. Adrian's face turned red, then pale. He stormed off stage. Reporters swarmed. I let them, because sometimes revenge doesn't need a sword. It just needs a spotlight. If you've been following this story, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. It helps bring more stories like this to you. That night, I sat in the quiet. The company was still mine. The walls still stood. But storms don't end with thunder. They end with the flood. And I knew Adrian wasn't finished. Adrian vanished for a week. No calls, no board appearances, no reporters. Silence is never peace. It is only the sound before a new storm. Noah told me he had been meeting with a rival firm, men who had tried once before to buy us out during the recession. Their pitch then was survival. Their pitch now was conquest. On the 8th day, he returned. He stood in the lobby of headquarters with two strangers in tailored suits. Cameras were ready, as always. His voice was sharper, almost rehearsed. He announced an alliance, a proposed merger that would stabilize the market. He promised synergies, expansion, new horizons. Every word was theater, but the contract he held was a dagger. It gave away voting rights, control, and board seats. It handed over what blood had built. I let him finish. I asked one question. Was this board consulted? The answer was obvious. He had signatures from outsiders, not from us. Reporters swarmed him. Some applauded. Some smelled blood. I smelled desperation. That night I walked the old corridors alone. Walls lined with patents, photographs of first shipments, employees who had been here longer than Adrian had been alive. Every face in those frames was a witness. Betrayal wasn't a headline here, it was a fracture. But fractures can be mended with steel if you act before they spread. The next morning I called Delgado and Maeve. We met behind closed doors, no cameras, no noise. "He will sell us to enemies," I said, "unless we cut him out entirely." Maeve slid over the papers. Trust amendments, board resolutions, clauses I had written decades ago. Safety nets for storms like this. "You can remove him," she said, "not just from the chair, not just from the board, but from inheritance. Disinheritance clauses are rarely used, but this qualifies." Delgado exhaled. "He is your son." I nodded. "And he is trying to kill what I built. Blood is not a shield when it is used as a weapon. Would you cut your own child out of everything if he tried to sell your company to rivals? Or would you still leave him something because of his blood? Tell me what you would do in the comments." The shareholder assembly was called in secret. No press, no public spectacle, just signatures, seals, and truth. I presented the merger draft, showed the terms, explained the cost. Silence filled the room. Then hands rose, not for him, but against him. The vote was final. Adrian suspended. All authority revoked pending final hearing. The company, for now, was safe, but Adrian was not a man who accepted suspension. He was a man who mistook it for exile. Exile breeds rage. Rage breeds mistakes. 3 nights later, Noah called me at 2 a.m. "He's trying to move money," he whispered. "Personal accounts, maybe corporate too. Transfers flagged. Block everything above 5,000, I said. "Let the banks call me before approval." Adrian's suspension did not quiet him. It made him louder in other rooms, in smaller corners where whispers grow sharper than shouts. He called employees at night, promising them futures that did not exist. He visited suppliers, warning them of chaos if they continued to deal with me. He spoke to anyone who would listen, and even to those who would not. I kept listening through silence. Noise is only dangerous when you react to it. Silence, on the other hand, forces the other side to fill the air with more and more reckless words. Maeve arrived in my office one morning, her arms full of folders. She dropped them on the table. "He has been leaking information," she said. "Not just rumors. Draft contracts, projections, even emails. Selective but damaging." I opened one folder. Pages marked in red, numbers twisted out of context, timelines cut short, all shaped to tell a story of collapse. "He wants panic," I said. "Yes," Maeve replied, "because panic moves markets faster than proof does." That afternoon I called a staff meeting. Engineers, operators, accountants, even custodial supervisors, everyone who touched the company in some way. I did not speak of Adrian. I spoke of bolts, steel, welds, numbers, of how much revenue was booked, how many shipments were scheduled, how many patents were live. Hard evidence, work that cannot be shouted away. When I finished, the room was still. Then someone began to clap. It spread slowly, until the entire room echoed with the sound. No speeches, no promises, just confirmation that the ground beneath them had not moved. Walking out, I thought of Adrian. He had always craved applause. He never understood that the quiet loyalty of workers was stronger than the noise of any crowd. That evening, Noah entered quietly. "He is gathering signatures," he whispered. "Not directors, not officers, employees. A petition demanding new leadership. He is telling them you have grown too old." I looked at him. "And how many signed?" "Not enough," Noah said, "but some. Enough to worry." I closed my eyes for a moment. "Prepare a counter-statement, signed by those who built this place for 20 years, and make sure the reporters see it before his petition." Noah nodded. "Would you forgive your son if he turned your own employees against you, or would you see it as the final betrayal? Think about it carefully and write what you would do." The next morning, Adrian's petition reached the press. Reporters waited outside my car as I arrived. They shouted questions. "Will you resign? Has your own staff abandoned you?" I said nothing. Then, as if on cue, Noah handed out the counter-statement. Photographs of welders, engineers, secretaries, names of men and women who had carried the company through recessions and storms. Their signatures told the real story. The headlines shifted within hours. "Founder retains loyalty of core workforce." Adrian's noise was still loud, but its echo had thinned. And in business, echoes die faster than facts. But I knew this was not the end. A man who has lost once will gamble twice as hard the second time. And Adrian was already reaching for his next gamble. Adrian did not slow down. Suspension only gave him more time to plan in the shadows. Noah entered my office one evening with a folder in his hands, his face pale. "He is reaching foreign investors," he said. "Private equity groups, funds that don't care about legacy, only numbers. He's trying to convince them to buy shares and force you out." I looked at the folder. Letters, emails, even a draft term sheet. My son was offering them the company at a discount, promising them board seats, dividends, control. The irony burned. He was willing to sell cheap what I had built dear, just to claim a crown he had not earned. I closed the folder slowly. The law protects against hostile takeovers when there is fraud or misrepresentation, I said. Gather the evidence. Every line. Maeve joined us an hour later. She spread documents across the table. "We can prove he misled them," she said. "We can prove he offered what he had no right to offer." Adrian was clever, but cleverness without wisdom is just noise. He mistook ambition for vision, deception for power. That night I thought of Ellen again. She once told me, "The easiest thing to inherit is money. The hardest is responsibility." Adrian wanted the first. He fled the second. 2 days later, a shareholder forum was called. Adrian stood before the investors, sharp suit, polished words. He spoke of youth, of change, of markets hungry for speed. He painted me as the old guard, clinging to traditions. His voice carried fire. The crowd listened. When my turn came, I did not raise my voice. I spoke of numbers, of contracts, of proof. I showed them his promises to funds he had no authority to invite. I displayed the timelines, the forged assumptions, the risks hidden under his words. The room shifted, the fire dimmed, because markets do not fear age. Markets fear instability, and Adrian was instability wrapped in a tie. As the forum ended, I stepped closer to him. Quiet enough for only him to hear, I said, "You can shout at cameras, but you cannot shout balance sheets into truth." His eyes burned. Mine did not. "Would you have confronted him in front of the investors, or whispered the truth in private? Tell me how you would have handled it." That evening, Delgado called. "He is finished," he said. The board sees it. The shareholders see it. No, I answered. He is cornered, and cornered men don't stop. They strike. Later that night, a call came from security. Adrian had entered the prototype lab. Cameras showed him pacing, pulling open drawers, searching. He wanted something tangible, something he could use to claim authority. He wanted the token I had hidden, the safeguard for our most valuable code. I drove there myself. The corridors were dark, lights humming low. As I opened the lab door, he froze. His hand was in the drawer, empty. He turned slowly, eyes wide with fury. "This was mine," he shouted. "No," I said. "It was never yours." The drawer was empty. Adrian's hand hovered above it, as if he could pull something from the air itself. His breathing was sharp, his suit wrinkled, his voice trembling with fury. "This was mine," he shouted. "No," I said. "It was never yours." He stepped closer, his fists tight. "You can't stop me. I will take it piece by piece if I have to. The board, the employees, the investors, they will follow me because I will make them believe you are finished." I kept my voice steady. "Belief collapses when proof arrives, and you have none." His eyes flickered. For a moment I saw not a rival, not an enemy, but a child who had once asked me how to tighten a bolt, who had once run through these halls with grease on his hands. But memory is not a shield against betrayal. Noah appeared at the door. "Security is here," he whispered. Adrian pushed past him, storming out, his voice echoing down the corridor. "This isn't over." I stood in the silence that followed. The lab smelled of metal and oil, the smell of beginnings. Every great fire leaves smoke. Adrian was smoke without flame. The next morning, Maeve brought new documents. "We can act now," she said. "Disinheritance, removal, permanent exclusion." She laid the forms on my desk, legal words heavy as stone. Delgado joined us. His face was gray. "Are you sure?" he asked. I looked at them both. "He has crossed the line. Family does not excuse sabotage. Family makes it worse. Would you sign away your own son if he tried to burn what you built? Or would you hesitate, hoping he might change? Tell me what your decision would be." I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake. Every clause, every signature was another wall raised between him and the company. Protection is not cruelty when destruction is the alternative. That night I went home to silence. The house felt heavier without Ellen. I placed the signed papers beneath her photograph. "You wanted me to guard this," I whispered. "I am still guarding." But deep inside, I knew Adrian would not fade quietly. Paper ends inheritance. Rage does not read paper. Adrian did not wait long to strike again. The day after the disinheritance papers were signed, he called a gathering of employees in the cafeteria. Cameras were not allowed, but phones were. Soon clips spread online, Adrian standing on a table, speaking of betrayal, of a father who had abandoned his blood. His words were fire, reckless and desperate, but fire always draws a crowd. Noah showed me the footage that night. I watched Adrian's eyes, too wide, his hands shaking. "He is losing them," I said quietly, "not winning them." Maeve folded her arms. "Even a cornered man can set a blaze. You should address this directly." The next morning I walked into the factory floor. No cameras, no podiums, just me, the noise of machines, and the people who had kept this place alive. I told them the truth. I spoke of Adrian's promises to rival firms, of contracts signed without authority, of risks he demanded they carry on their backs. I did not raise my voice. I simply laid out the facts, steady as steel. When I finished, one of the welders spoke. "We came here for work, not for his drama," We stand with you." A murmur ran through the room, and then the sound of hammers striking metal filled the silence again. The work continued. Work is louder than speeches. That afternoon, Adrian stormed into my office, his face red. "You turned them against me?" he shouted. "No," I answered. "You did that yourself." He slammed the desk with his fist. "If the board won't give me power, the courts will. I'll sue. I'll drag your name through every paper in this country." I leaned forward slowly. "Do you think newspapers decide ownership? Do you think courts reward lies when the documents are clean? Try it. You will find that the law is colder than any father's heart." For a second, he faltered. His anger slipped into something else. Fear, perhaps. Then he turned, muttering, "You'll see. You'll all see." Would you have spoken to him like this with cold truth, or tried to soften the words because he is still your son? Write what you think down below. I want to know if you would have chosen fire or ice. That night, Delgado called me. "He is drafting a lawsuit," he said. "He claims you manipulated the board, that you faked the audit, that you stole assets." I looked out the window at the city lights blinking like restless eyes. "Let him file it," I said. "Every lie he tells under oath will be the rope he ties around his own neck." But deep down, I knew Adrian's war was not about courts or contracts anymore. It was about pride, and pride never surrenders quietly. Adrian filed the lawsuit exactly as Delgado warned. The papers arrived in thick envelopes, stamped and sealed, full of accusations that twisted every act I had taken into shadows. He claimed fraud, manipulation, theft. He painted himself as the true heir, the savior betrayed by his own father. Maeve spread the documents across my desk. "It's noise," she said, "thin, reckless noise. But courts require answers. We'll bury him with evidence." I looked through the pages. His words were fire, but fire without fuel dies quickly. Every claim he made was answered by a signature, a timestamp, a witness. Still, the trial would not be about proof alone. It would be about perception. The court date arrived fast. Adrian entered the room with cameras flashing outside, his lawyer at his side. He looked confident, but I saw the tremor in his hand when he held the pen. The judge listened carefully as his attorney spoke of betrayal and concealment. They used phrases meant for headlines, not for rulings. They wanted spectacle. When it was my turn, Maeve rose. She placed our exhibits on the bench: audits, contracts, notarized transfers, affidavits. Clean, cold, undeniable. The judge's face revealed nothing, but silence grew heavier with each page turned. Adrian shifted in his seat. His fire dimmed with every notarized seal, every official stamp. And when Maeve finished, she said simply, "The truth requires no theater." The gavel struck. "Case dismissed." Noise outside erupted instantly. Reporters shouted, cameras lit the air, questions flew like arrows. I walked through them slowly. Adrian shoved his way past, his face pale with fury. Later that night, Noah sat across from me. "It should be over now," he said. I shook my head. "For some men, losing in court is not the end. It is the spark for something worse." Would you have felt relief when the judge dismissed the case, or would you, like me, have felt only the weight of what was coming next? Share what you think in the comments. The following week proved me right. Adrian was seen leaving a hotel downtown with men no one recognized. Quiet figures, foreign suits, briefcases that carried not contracts, but intentions. Whispers reached me before the papers did. He was plotting a direct move, one that would bypass courts and boards entirely. Noah came to me with worry in his eyes. He wants to seize the servers, he said. The backups, the code, the patents, all digitized now. If he takes them, he controls the lifeblood. I rose slowly. Then we guard the lifeblood. This time not with papers, not with seals, but with walls and doors. Security was tightened, locks changed, access codes rotated. Adrian had forced me into a corner I never wanted, protecting the company not from rivals outside, but from blood inside. That night I stood alone in the server room, cold air humming around me, lights blinking like watchful eyes. I thought of Ellen again, and of the promise I made to guard this place. "It will end soon," I whispered, "one way or another." And in the silence that followed, I knew Adrian was already moving toward his final strike. Adrian chose the night for his final move. Security cameras showed him slipping into the server wing with two men in dark coats. They carried nothing at first, but their eyes carried intent. He thought the servers would give him the power he had lost everywhere else. The patents, the code, the digital blood of the company. I was already waiting. The hum of machines filled the corridor, steady as a heartbeat. Lights blinked on racks of metal, each one a pulse of decades of work. When Adrian entered, his voice cracked against the silence. "You locked me out of the board. You took away inheritance, but you can't lock me out of this. If I control the code, I control everything." I stepped from the shadows. "No," I said quietly. "The code is only power if you understand how to use it, and you never did." The men behind him froze when security stepped forward. Delgado had called them, and Maeve had prepared the court orders. The two strangers hesitated, then lowered their hands. They were professionals. They would not go to prison for someone else's grudge. Adrian stood alone. He tried one last time, his words wild. "I am your son. You can't erase me. This company was my birthright." I moved closer, slow and steady. "Birthright is not the same as ownership. Blood gives you a name. Work gives you the rest. And you tried to take without ever building." His shoulders sagged. For the first time, his fury broke into something raw. I just wanted it to be mine. I felt the weight of years pressing down. For a moment, I saw the boy he had been. But that boy was gone, and the man before me had burned the bridge back. Security escorted him out, his protests echoing into the cold hall. I remained in the server room, machines humming around me. Revenge had not been fire, it had been patience, signatures, and finally, silence. Would you have shown him mercy in that final moment? Or would you, like me, have let the consequences speak for themselves? Write your answer below. I want to know if you believe mercy still had a place. The next morning, the board convened. Delgado read the filings aloud. Adrian's removal was official, final, irreversible. The company stood intact. The storm had passed. I walked through the factory floor once more. The welders worked, the machines roared, the smell of steel filled the air. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had. At Ellen's photo that evening, I set the final document down. "It's done," I whispered. "The company is safe." The walls stood, the work continued, the legacy remained, and Adrian was gone.